Okay, so this week it's kind of funny, but there is no Torah portion in America this week.
What?
Because we have the Holiday of Shavuot. So the Holiday Shavuos starts tomorrow night, Thursday night, and it goes Thursday night, Friday night, Shabbos. So when you have a holiday that lands on a Shabbos like this, not where it's like the Chol HaMoed, like the intermediary days, when it's the actual Yom Tov itself, very nice of the Shabbos to say, okay, I'll move to the side and I'll allow you to take over the day. So we will mention Shabbos. We'll do like an extra aliyah, or the second to last aliyah will be for Shabbos, and then Haftorah will be connected to the holiday. But that's we'll actually read Rus, the story of Rus, and we'll come up then. So that's the story with why no Torah portion. So we have the great excuse.
So wait a minute, I'm
go ahead.
confused. Are you saying the Torah portion is a portion of Ruth, or there's
So
no?
we're exactly. We're not going to read the Torah portion. We're going to read is a holiday portion. We're not going to read a Shabbos portion.
Got it. Okay, thank you. All right.
So like last week was Bamidbar, so this week would be Naso.
Yes.
Would be Naso, and but we're not going to read Naso. We'll read that next week.
Oh, so it just pushes it off. We don't lose it.
Yeah, we don't lose it. It'll get pushed off. Okay. So that's the story. So therefore, anyways, I was hoping to talk about the Holiday Shavuot. So let's do it.
Let's do it.
So Shavuos, obviously, we know the main idea of it, which really we talked about this in past years, how for some reason it's not as well known of a holiday outside of traditional circles, mostly because Hebrew schools are over. Some places, not this year, but last year, school was already over in some schools. Some Hebrew day schools were already over with Shavuos before Shavuos even happened. So that definitely makes a challenge, which is why it's important for us to make sure we don't fully rely on our Hebrew day schools. It's important for us to also share Torah and Judaism with our families and beyond to make sure that everyone knows about it. Because if we just relied on our temples and our synagogues and all those things, then we wouldn't necessarily get all of it in there. So it's important for us to go ahead and make sure that we also are part of what Shavuos is about. Shavuos is all about when the Torah was brought down from heaven onto this earth and given to the Jewish people. That's what happened. Went ahead and brought it down from Hashem's wisdom, God's wisdom, brought down into this world. And there's famous, beautiful midrashim that talk about when Moshe went up there to go get the Torah. So the angels are like all upset. The angels are like, "What? You can't take this Torah away from us and bring it down into like the world, like down there. Those fragile, right? Those heathens, right? Exactly. You're gonna take this Torah and bring it down to those people? Like, God, what are you doing? Right?" Now, God says, so then there's actually this back and forth between Moshe and the angels, and they give in. They're like, yeah, you're right. Actually, when we think about it, like us angels, like we don't really have arms to put the tefillin on. Like, okay, yeah, makes sense, right? And we haven't left Egypt. No, we never did that either, right? So this Moshe just brings up how maybe you angels have some connection in some way to the essence of Torah, right, to the wisdom of God, but the practical aspects of doing the mitzvahs, right, that's not something for angels. That's for man to work through, to struggle through, to grow through. That's for mankind. And that's what Shavuos really does. And Shavuos, it wasn't just for the Jews, really. It really is what brought a moral compass into the world.
Let me stop you there if I can.
Yeah.
I read an article recently that said that many of the laws of the Torah had already been assigned through the Sumerians. That they had a law that was a set of laws that were encoded before the Torah came that was very similar. And who was the other one? The Bahrainian.
There's maybe sometimes they talk about the what are they called? The Karaites.
Right. Well, the Karaites are the ones that supposedly only follow the written Torah, not the oral
Yeah,
Torah, right?
exactly.
But
Yes.
what
Yep.
I'm saying here is that prior to the written Torah being given to us, supposedly there were two other sets of laws that were established on earth by different cultures that were very similar to what Torah was, at least.
It's possible. I'd have to research it more. There definitely was a concept that of different ideas that already Avram and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka, um, Yaakov and his kids, they already were doing a lot of the Torah. It wasn't necessarily connected to the land of Israel per se. It wasn't necessarily connected to the experience that of how it was brought out in the Torah the way that we know it, right? When they celebrated Pesach, they weren't celebrating Pesach because we left Egypt. They hadn't left Egypt yet, right? But there was still an energy to matzah, still an energy to shofar. Shabbos was something. These were all things that the Talmud talks about how they kept the Shabbos, and perhaps they even kept some of the rabbinic laws. That obviously they were not established yet as rabbinic laws,
They
but
just did them.
they were already doing a lot of those things.
So how
So
about the laws of Noahide? That
and then
obviously.
Noah laws, so those would have been around also. Um, those and all those most of those are really common sense when you boil them down. So so those were definitely things that could be that type of thing was certainly being kept, but not kept in a sense like, oh, we're obligated to keep this because it was given to us, but more that more of the this was the moral, this was what was done. The concept of it being obligatory and the concept of this is how you're going to help yourself and the world accomplish its purpose and accomplish its mission, right? That really only comes about once the mission was expressed to the world. So that's really that's what Shavuos really begins. That and it also really it solidifies. We like to look at it as like a marriage. You know, Mount Sinai was kind of like the chuppah, so to speak, and the Torah is the marriage contract, and between us and God, and that's
So
really
the scrolls that we read today have a
yeah,
lot of words and letters on them.
yep,
Moses carried down tablets, right?
yeah, yeah.
How many tablets did he have to carry down to cover the entire written Torah?
So the tablets were only what was on the tablets were only the Ten Commandments.
Got it.
The Ten Commandments, which are written out in two different places in the Torah, the Book of Jethro and Va'et Hanan in Devarim. Um, that's what was written down on those tablets, and that's what was given over at literally said at Mount Sinai.
Okay.
The actual Torah itself, as we know it, that scroll was written down towards the end of Moshe's life, really right at the end of the Torah, right at the end of the 5 books. Is really where Moshe, right before he passed on, he actually wrote Torah scrolls and gave one to each of the tribes. Whoa. I think we're getting your storm coming in over here, Mitchell. The storm that
Okay.
you had. Yeah, it's coming. Let's see it. Thunder, lightning. And that's what happened at Mount Sinai. There was thunder and lightning at Mount Sinai.
Maybe you're about to get some tablets.
Look, maybe I should take 2 tablets. The doctor will go away from me.
There you go.
The so that's and if I can remember, I'll try to send along an amazing article. I've seen it in 2 different places. That's to see, but it's an article that I put a bunch of things together at some point. I'll look it up. I may have it. That talks
Well,
about why did Hashem specifically give those 10 over like out loud at Mount Sinai? How does that relate to like how's that an expression of the rest of the Torah? So that's really what was practically what was done.
so
There's a book
really, for
called
most of the end
Yeah.
of Moses's life, we had the oral Torah, and then he created the written Torah, and then the rest that he didn't write down remains the oral Torah.
No, so what happened is the only thing the written down was the 5 books. The only question is the last line where it says that Moses died, right? So that was written down by Joshua. There's 2 different discussions in the Talmud about whether Joshua actually wrote it or Moshe outlined the letters because he knew it was about to happen, and then then Joshua filled it in. But that's really but the actual 5 books as we know it were written down on scroll by Moshe. The oral law was a tradition that was given over by Moshe also, given over from Hashem through Moshe. That whole oral law, which we look at as the Mishnah and the Talmud, right? Those were originally not written down. They were the oral law. They only were written down later on in history when the Jewish nation was being dispersed throughout the world with our exiles. And the rabbis were like, whoa, we're not supposed to write this down. But if we don't write this down, at least in some form, we're going to lose it.
Yeah.
So the world shook when some of these things were written, some of these things were translated. It was not a simple thing, and it was not what God ultimately wanted originally. We forced God's hand, so to speak. The power of us, right? In a negative sense, really.
How I just can't imagine how that would have gone. Like the fights that must have gone on as to whether that should have been written down, when it was written down, and what kind of a struggle the Jewish people as a whole just had to go through.
It was a huge struggle. And the Mishnah is a little, that we have was all written down. They call him Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, Rabbi Yehuda the Prince. He was the one who really took on that job. He wrote down the Mishnah as we know it. And then the Gemara was mostly written down by we have the Babylonian Talmud and the Jerusalem Talmud, which a lot of overlap with a few different discrepancies. And that's part of the people always ask me. They used to walk by the kollel, and they're like, "What are you guys doing all day? Like, you're rabbis already. Like, what's your problem? Like, study the books, learn the laws. Like, what's your problem?" And my answer was, "Have you ever actually picked a page of Talmud and gone through it and tried to really understand it and really, dig in and take it apart and understand it well and really become part of the tradition?" And that's what I wanted to mention tonight. There's a beautiful idea that says that that the word Yisrael stands for Yesh Shishim Riboy. Yesh Shishim Yisrael Riboy. That there's 600,000 letters in the Torah. Okay? Now, if you actually count the Torah, you'll see there's not 600,000 letters. There's actually 300,000 or so letters. But what's this concept, though? So, a little bit deeper, I'll just give it over in a very, one or two sentences. It's very deep, and it requires a lot of, like we are just talking about, digging in, right? But the concept is, we have things in the Torah sometimes, or even with the oral law itself, really, where the word in the Torah is written one way, but it's pronounced another way, which is actually why you're not allowed to put the dots inside of a Torah scroll. Because as soon as you put the dots in, you've now limited to what that word can mean, or what the meaning of the Torah is at that point. So the Torah specifically does not have dots, have the nekudot in there. Okay, so this is classic. This is written law and oral law, just a perfect example of it. Okay, so when you look at the written words, there's actually more that lies behind those words than that. Each of those letters really can be a representative of multiple words. Or sometimes it could be an actual letter spelled out. But there's this concept of there being 600,000. There's also an idea that there's 600,000 Jewish souls that ultimately exist. They get divided a little bit through history and through different, what do you call it, Gilgal, which is different, what do they call it, when people pass on, they come back, and some of these things, there's just also kind of heebie-jeebie and esoteric and some of those kinds of things. But what do I want to get to with this? What I want to get to is, in order for God to give the Torah, in order for us to have, there's a law that says if you're missing one letter from the Torah, or if one letter from that Torah is written wrong, or it gets rubbed out, or it has a mistake in it, that Torah is not a kosher Torah scroll to be used. Right? It's not a kosher Torah scroll to use in for services. Okay? So why is that? What's so? Because the concept is that in order for us to have the entire Torah, we needed to have everybody together, which is why God gathered all the Jews at Mount Sinai at one time And they had to be a unified group when this happened. So they were one. They became one people. In fact, they point out that it says that we were ki'ish echad b'lev echad. We were like one man, ki'ish echad, like one man, b'lev echad, with one heart. I think I mentioned this in the past. One man with one heart. What does that mean? We have the one heart. The heart itself is going to be the Torah, is going to be our Judaism. And the one man component is each of us is a different organ or ligament or sinew, whatever it is. Each of us have a unique representation or a unique role or job in the Jewish people. Just as every letter in the Torah has its job, its role, each and every person has a unique role that they're supposed to take care of for the Jewish people. So much so that there's actually unique Torah that every person is supposed to bring into the world. A unique part of Torah, piece of Torah, whether it's a new idea that's brought out from one of the verses or a unique way to look at one of the laws or something or another. We never know exactly if it's what it is, which is why we got to keep on studying. But there's a certain thing that only that individual has the ability to bring into the world, which is an amazing concept. And this is really where it all started, at Mount Sinai on the Holiday of Shavuos. And the Holiday of Shavuos is the time for us to go ahead and reflect and perhaps try to think about, hey, how am I doing with my Torah study? Do I have Torah study in my life? Do I not have Torah study in my life? Am I studying enough? Am I putting some pressure on myself to make sure I get a little extra Torah study in? Am I working on this project of figuring out what's my unique Torah? In order to figure that out, I got to study some Torah, right? How am I doing with my mitzvahs in general? So really, Shavuos has this aspect to it. This aspect of going ahead and reflecting on our lives and almost recalibrating or recommitting ourselves to our Torah study, to our Judaism, to our connection with Hashem. That's really what Shavuos is all about. And if we ever feel like, oh, wait, there's so many other people studying Torah, what do I need to worry about that for? Well, guess what? God wanted everybody God not just wanted, God needed, so to speak, everybody there. So every piece of the Torah was there. Every piece of the people were there. And we were there. Our souls, because each of us have a Jewish soul, whether it's our whole soul or part of a soul, that gets into Kabbalistic stuff that I don't understand, right? But there was a part of us that was there. And this is our chance to go ahead and rekindle it, reconnect it, recalibrate it, and give it the energy it needs to boost it off into a whole nother year of Torah study. And that's really what Shavuos is really about. And it's an amazing opportunity to make sure. So, like I'm going to stay up the whole night tomorrow night. That's the way that I push myself to kind of, show Hashem, right, that I'm all in. I know it's going to be hard, and it probably won't be my best Torah study, right? The fresh study in the morning with right after a coffee, my brain's working, right? My medicine's kicked in, I'm doing well, right? That's my best Torah study, right? But I'm gonna put myself through I'm gonna rough it. I'm gonna rough it through the night. There's other stories as to why the Jewish people have taken on that tradition, but for myself, what we're talking about tonight, this idea of showing myself, hey Noach, let's get gritty. Let's get a little dirty over here. Let's rough it out. We can do this, and then push through, put in that extra energy, and show myself what I can do. And by putting in that energy, obviously that's a great way to kick off the season, to go ahead and really.
So where are you studying tomorrow night? Is it part of the kollel? Is it part of the day school?
So part of it will be with some of the yeshiva that I'm with. So I'm going to give a class there. The local synagogue, the one that I go to, there's like 40 synagogues in Baltimore, but the one I've been going to, actually very good friends with Rabbi Nissan, the rabbis over there. So I'll be giving the first class over there. I'm going to talk about lessons learned from the obstacle course of life. So obviously I'll take some lessons.
They're letting you lead off.
Yeah, which is very nice of them. And it also will allow me to give that class and then head over to my students at the yeshiva. So that'll work. That works out well also. But that's what I'll be doing.
I didn't realize you were teaching as well, Noach. I thought you were fundraising. What are you teaching?
I am mostly supposed to be fundraising, but it's good for me to get to know some of the students also. It helps me become, more passionate, more part of it. And it allows me to